How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another video. I hope you're having a lovely and wonderful day so far. So, on today's topic, we are going to be talking about the one and only FX6. Now, you're probably wondering, I've brought this camera up a couple of times already, and you've seen it in some of my videos. Heck, the number one video I have with the most views is actually one of my builds of the FX6, and I have a whole ton more if you're curious of seeing more of those in the future. Why did I pick the FX6 out of every potential cinema camera? I mean, you have the Red Komodo, the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 12K Pro, the Canon C70, that's another decent one. Why did I go with the FX6? Funny enough, when I was looking around in the camera market, I had no intention of getting the FX6 to begin with. My mindset was towards two other cameras, the Red Komodo and the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 12K. And the reason why I was interested in those two cameras was because of the fact that they were not Sony. I've been rolling with Sony cameras ever since the a6000, which was my very first camera, and then I had that for a couple of years, upgraded to the a7 III, which brought me into a whole new world of full frame. Then I moved on from the a7 III to the FX30, which I'm using to record right now. And now I finally wanted to get myself a proper big boy cinema camera. I still think the FX30 is a proper cinema camera, despite what people have to say, but as far as a traditional looking cinema camera, I wanted to get something that was different. And looking at each of those cameras on paper, they both have things that are really going well for them. Now, I don't really think I need to talk about the slew of reasons why the Red Komodo is pretty much the industry standard camera for an under 10K budget, but I guess I'll say it anyway. The Red Code RAW and the RD3 color science is absolutely out of this world. The fact that you can be able to adjust things such as your ISO balance in post editing is absolutely insane. Plus, with the insane amount of dynamic range that you get, you can be able to easily recover highlights or shadows, provided you're exposing everything properly. And lastly, it's the industry standard for what cinematic looks look like. You can be able to point to a whole slew of indie films and shorts that have made it and become pretty popular, and chances are they were either shot on an Arri or a Red camera. And in a world where a lot of high profile clientele really can't tell the difference between what 8-bit and 16-bit is as far as color science, and the fact that their eyes glaze over when you mention things like hyperlog gamma, they're probably just going to pay attention to, is it a Red camera? And that could be enough to get you a job or not. But there are some pretty big cons that, in my case, made it a deal breaker. For one, you virtually have no autofocus. Now, I know in the app it allows you to kind of have a pseudo autofocus, but compared to the cameras that I've been using previously, Sony is just number one when it comes to autofocus. And I'm not looking for Sony level performance autofocus. But if you're using autofocus just to get a reference before a scene starts, it kind of defeats the purpose of having it, in my opinion. Number two, it's pretty expensive to get into it. While the camera itself is only $6 grand, you're also gonna have to pay for a monitor. You're gonna have to pay for grips. You're gonna have to pay for a proper cage. You're pretty much gonna have to pay another $6 grand in order to get it up and running to how you want it precisely. And I know that's kind of the ballpark when it comes to cinema cameras. You're never just paying for the camera. But if I'm having to pay that much out of pocket for basic functionality that I could get on other cinema cameras, that's a little bit of a deal breaker. And finally, the setup time. Now, on a mid or high level production where you have multiple days in order to shoot and time isn't really that big of a factor, or budget isn't that much of a factor, a minute to a minute and a half for setup time is nothing. But for me, as a run and gun filmmaker and someone who likes to make YouTube videos here and there, having to sit for almost a minute and a half just for my camera to turn on could mean I completely miss something that I won't be able to capture again. Plus, it's just another barrier that might stop me from shooting altogether. Now, it sounds kind of silly, but there are times where you just really don't want to film anything, but you're still wanting to improve your skill. But anything that can get in your way, could be that one thing that just makes you go, nah, I'm not feeling it today. I'm done. Goodbye. So, although out of all three, you can argue that the Red gives you the most cinematic look, it had to get cut off my list. So let's move over to the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 12K Pro, or was it the Blackmagic Ursa Pro 12K? We're gonna call it the Blackmagic 12K because that is an insanely long name. Now, on paper, it pretty much ticks off all the boxes for me. For one, it's unbelievably future-proof. Being able to record 12K, and not just 12K, but you can go up to 120 frames per second in 8K and 240 in 12K. That is pretty much unheard of. Toss in the fact that it's a Super 35 sensor, you can be able to use it with virtually any lens that you want, from super cheap ones to super expensive ones. And it comes with a couple of basic necessities that you're gonna need as a run and gun filmmaker. Top handle, I think it comes with the viewfinder, but I'm not 100% certain about that. LCD screen, you get XLR ports, and for a very long time, that was the cinema camera I was gonna go for. So why didn't I? Well, for one, I did a lot of research, and compared to the FX6, the low light performance was really lacking. And it's not to say that it's terrible, but once noise gets into your image, it's really hard to get rid of it. Not to mention the fact that it is insanely chunky, weighing 5 pounds for just the body. So if you put a decent quality lens, a couple of accessories, a V-mount battery, maybe some audio, if you're gonna be using those XLR ports and an extra monitor, whoo, you're gonna need like an easy rig in order to be able to carry it all for longer than a couple of minutes. Don't get me wrong, your boy got a little bit, okay, it's not really there, but you can pretend that there's like a good amount of muscle there. But even then, I can't really hold on to a 15, 20 pounds worth of camera for as long as we need for, 2-3 hour long shoots sometime. And when I'm going out into the forest in order to do some of my videos where I just do weird stuff in the forest, I'm hiking for a couple of miles, and that is a lot of weight to have on my back. But with all that said, the Ursa Mini 12K, I would probably still buy it. I could get around the weight. There are easy rigs, or there are systems put in place, and I could just get stronger at the gym. But here's another issue. You can't find them anywhere in Germany. I've looked through countless camera shops, countless stores, and unless I'm willing to pay a couple extra $100 for shipping and handling, or waiting several weeks, I can't get my hands on one. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is with that. Maybe it's just, I don't know, an EU or a Germany problem, but it seems like anything that's not super basic as far as cinema or photography, you're gonna have to immediately order it. And it gets pretty expensive here because you also have an extra 19% VAT tax on top of everything. So I'm going to be paying a lot more than the $6,200 to $6,400 that I would already be paying base price here anyway. So as much as it sucks to say, as with most things in life, I just could not afford or be able to get my hands on the 12K. But you know what? That's all right because, well, with no other options left, I went back to Sony and I decided to look at the FX6. I wasn't really vibing with it at all. There was no stabilization, which was unheard of with the last several cameras that I had. The menu system was still dog shit. All the other menu systems that I've used before have been absolute garbage, but at least with the FX30, they gave some sort of concept of trying. I'm not exactly sure what Sony is smoking at HQ to come up with these menu designs, but maybe they should take a couple lessons from Canon or Fujifilm or Blackmagic or Arri or Red, Nikon, Olympus, Panasonic. Did that cover all of them? Just pretty much anyone but Sony. Just take notes from anyone but Sony on how to make a menu system. And last but not least, it's using the same sensor that's on the A7S III and the FX3. So why not just get one of those instead and save myself like an extra $2,000-$3,000 potentially, especially on the used market? Well, for the exact same reason why I couldn't get my hands on the Ursa 12K, I couldn't get my hands on an A7S III or an FX3. I know, it seems as if though the entire world is trying to just shove me in the direction of the FX6. And I kind of relented and said, you know what, screw it, why not? There are still some pretty decent things to it. And after using it for a little while, I gotta admit, I am a little bit, I don't know exactly how to feel. It's as if though I'm upset with the fact that I didn't buy it earlier, but at the same time, I'm happy that I kind of was super, iffy about it in the beginning and did so much research and treated it so hectically, because now that I know all of its flaws, it makes it all the more amazing for me to shoot with because I can anticipate everything. So let's talk about some of the pros that you get with it first. For one, with the Sony E-mount, hit the mic. With the Sony E-mount system and the way that they designed and have the sensor so close to the actual mount, you can put on virtually any lens that you want. Whether it's Sony branded, or if it's third party like Sigma or Tamron or Viltrox, or you can be able to use Canon EF or RF, or you can be able to use Arri PL lenses. All you need is an adapter. So in this case, I have the Digio Vespid Prime 35mm with a matte box. Oh, my mic. So in this case, I have the Digio Vespid Prime 35mm, and it came with a Canon EF mount. So all I had to do was get a Canon EF to E adapter. I keep hitting the microphone. Vespid Prime 35mm that uses a Canon EF mount. So all I had to do was go on Amazon, and for $50, I was able to get myself a Canon EF to Sony E mount adapter. So if I can carefully do this without hitting my microphone for the third time. There we go. And just like that, I'm able to use a lens that I normally would not be able to use with this camera at all. But Sony is okay with other lens manufacturers using their lens design or lens mount design. Another thing that people don't notice about the FX6 is that it is incredibly light. The body by itself weighs in at only 1.9 pounds. Now it does come up to like roughly 4 or 5 pounds when you include the BPU battery, the side grip, the top handle, and the LCD display. But that's a sub 5-pound package, and all you need to do is add a lens. So depending on what type of lens you add, you could have a super light and compact run and gun setup. And not to mention the fact that Pro number 3, you get pretty much everything that you need in order to run and gun with your camera. Now, I only really have the LCD display to use the menu since I already have. I had to adjust the microphone because I kept slapping it into the camera every time I brought it out, and I'm pretty sure you guys would not want to hear that every couple of minutes or so. In this case, with the rig that I have now, this is the rig that I'm probably going to be using close to 70, 80, maybe even 90% of the time, unless I need to add extra things to it, in which case I'll put on some rails. But you'll see that while I already have another monitor at play that I use for my main display, and I kind of just use a side one for the menu, and I don't have the original top handle anymore, it's still fully usable. This is perfectly capable. The only reason why I'm not running with it is because the tilt handle is a little bit smaller, and since I'm not really using audio a whole lot with the FX6 anymore, I'm mostly using the FX30 for that, I can be able to go with a sleeker and sexier look. But you pretty much get everything that you need, and you don't have to pay anything else out of pocket besides a lens. But let's say you want to go with the Sony brand, you can be able to use the Sony 50mm 1.8, which is about $250, $300, and boom, you're good to go. You're ready to start shooting a film. And let's not forget, you get optical zoom, which allows you to zoom into 1.5 times while having minimal image loss as far as quality. So you could have a 35mm that turns into a 50 for free. Let's get into some of the more well-known ones that people have been talking about every single time, and I have to do it as well because The fact that I'm able to have an electronic variable ND filter is absolutely insane. And it's one of those things that you don't notice at all until you switch back to a camera that doesn't have it. You have to screw on an ND filter, you swap a lens because maybe you're using primes, you got to take it off, screw it back on, and you have to adjust it throughout the day, and it becomes a gigantic pain. Forgot your ND filter? Guess what? Hope you like F11 all day long, otherwise you're not shooting. But with this camera, you never have to worry about it. And that's something that the Red doesn't have, and the Blackmagic does have, but it's only in 2, 4, and 6 increment stops. This is a 1 to 7 stop, and you can either have it set up to be in pre-stops, or you can have it set up to go all the way up from 128 to 1/4. So you can dial in exactly what you want your ND to be at. And you also have ND auto mode, which goes one step further and will auto adjust your exposure without touching any other of your camera settings. So that way, if you go from a dark area to a bright area, it'll keep the exposure roughly about the same, and it actually does a pretty good job at it too. I still like to keep control over my ND, so I don't have it on a whole lot, but you can definitely use this. Continuing on with exposure, we can't forget dual base ISO of 800 and 12,800, meaning I've been able to go out in virtually no light situations using only the moonlight in a wooded and dense area, and I've still been able to get usable footage is perfectly fine. Now, am I saying you're going to want to go out into the middle of the darkness every single day and get the best footage of your life? I'm not saying that's the case, but what I'm saying is you don't have to worry about your lighting situation as much when you're using this camera. But keep in mind though, it does help to have fast lenses. Now, we need to address something. I know a lot of you have been calling this camera the dad cam, the camcorder. And honestly, you might be right, because this has 10 out of 10 ergonomics. Being able to have multiple buttons that you can be able to use on a side grip that allows you to adjust it however you need to, and be able to have it be this comfy for a OEM side handle that comes with everything, you would expect it to be a piece of trash. I'm not gonna lie. The accessories are usually not that good. But I have not even considered the idea of getting rid of this side grip for another one. And I have the tilt-to-grip focusing handle, which allows me to focus my lenses. So it really goes to say a lot. And although I've switched to the tilt-to-top handle, the one that they give you is actually really impressive. It has good grip, it has good feel, and it gives you even more buttons on top with an MI hot shoe, which, if I'm gonna be honest, unless you're using the UDWP system, whatever they call it, it's virtually useless. The ergonomics of this camera are out of this world. It feels incredible in the hands to hold. And I think that covers all the pros for this camera. Oh wait, I forgot about something, didn't I? It's the thing that I'm using right now to keep me in focus, so that way I don't look like a blurry mess. Autofocus. Now, I know a lot of you hate it when it comes to proper filmmaking. And I know a lot of people use lenses that don't even have autofocus. The Digio doesn't even allow for autofocus. But I'm gonna be honest, having autofocus and some of the other features like ND auto is really important. And it's not because of the fact that I'm trying to pretend to be a filmmaker or because it makes it easier, right? It's because of the fact that it gives you the convenience to be able to set things up quickly and be able to focus more on your story. If you don't have to worry about constantly keeping the client in focus, you could focus more on the client's story. If you don't have to worry about lighting every single hour that passes, especially towards golden hour and it starts to get a little darker, or if it's cloudy, then you can focus more on your story. All these additional features that the FX6 has that admittedly the Red and the Blackmagic doesn't have, doesn't mean that the FX6 is all of a sudden not a real proper professional cinema camera. It doesn't really make sense to me that filmmakers want less features. I get the concept of wanting a company to focus on giving you the best image quality possible no matter what, but at the end of the day, I'm gonna go with the tool that works best for me, not the one that makes me feel the most like a proper filmmaker. Throughout my journey, not only before buying the FX6, but with the FX6, it's made me realize that I can use this FX6 in its truest form as a proper cinema camera. I can have the fully manual lens. I can have everything that I want to make it a true cinema camera, where the process itself is just as important as the story, because it feels like you're creating the story by making all the weird little mistakes and all the cinematic imperfections that make it perfect. But at the same time, I can be able to just sit down and do a simple video and not have to worry about any of that. I can go out with my friends and have a great time in the fields, or I can have a beautiful time with my wife in the forest and just shoot some funny, silly stuff, because I don't have to worry about what my focus is. I don't have to worry about what my current exposure is and if my false colors are reading correctly. I can just focus on making the story. And ultimately, that's why I chose the FX6. That, and I literally could not get my hands on anything else. But you know what? I'm kind of happy that that was the case, because I realized that this FX6, as much of a pain that it can be in some instances, gives me what I need. A tool that allows me to make the videos and the things that I need in the way that I prefer to do best. True one-man band, run and gun with the minimum equipment. And that is basically the story as to why I chose the FX6 over all the other cinema cameras in its price range. And hopefully this helped you out, whether you want to get a Red and go the traditional DP route, or whether you want the Blackmagic, because I'm not gonna lie, 8K 120 frame and 12K in general sounds pretty amazing. But I'm not here to judge. I'm here to tell you why I did what I did, and why you're going to be seeing a whole lot more content with it soon, because I have a pretty big project in mind. Now, I don't know when I'm going to be able to say it, but just know something is going on in the background. So with that, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let your boys and your ladies know about this, so that way we can continue to grow. I've noticed a lot more people are subscribing, and we are getting pretty up there. I'm not gonna lie to you. There ain't a whole ton of us, but I'm happy for each and every single one of you that has clicked and decided to watch this video. So with all that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace out. Bye bye.